I felt free and safe enough, believe it or not, to let all that stuff go. And once I did, it was such a freeing experience that I saw the world differently. I was able to see through a different lens. And then I think it was at that moment I got a sense for what you were experiencing with that peace, calmness, grounded centeredness, authenticity inside. It's like you were so much more peaceful and calm, and you became grounded, and you actually were more attentive and not running around all the time. It's like you really cared more about what I had to say.
God is always there, and we're the ones putting the walls up.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that
battle those demons every day.
Yeah. Hi, welcome to Unlocking the Miracles Within. Our show today is Navigating the Dark Night of the Soul. I'm your host, Jeffrey McDonnell, and I'm here today with my amazing and beautiful wife of 34 years. We've actually been together 38, but married 34. Julie's joined me. As I promised you in the first show, and if you haven't watched it, you can go back and watch it. I'll recap a little bit of it, but probably good for you to go back and watch episode 1 if you haven't watched it, because I go through my story, episode 1. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a bit about my story again, here with my wife, and Julie, and she's going to give her perspective on it, and why I think this is important for many of you that are going through a time of spiritual transition, as I did back in 2011. Many couples, many families don't make it through that moment. And I think by God's grace, Julie didn't abandon me, thank goodness. And actually, ultimately, as we'll tell in this story, joined me on that journey. Julie was an accomplished educator she doesn't make me call her doctor every day, but she's Dr. Julie. She's was an elementary educator for 30 plus years, also an administrator. Very accomplished in that. But I think in the last, since it's happened to me 14 years ago and she joined me on the journey, she ultimately retired and joined me here on creating this business, creating our own light. That's something I had been dreaming about for many years. And I can't think of anything better to be doing with my wife other than creating a business that brings people closer to God, things we love to do. So she just launched her first children's book yesterday. So proud of her. So that's out there if you want to check it out. It's called The Flowers in Grandma's Garden. You can look at that on our website at flowersinggrandmasgarden.com. You can also go onto Amazon and buy it, and you'll see her beautiful face there. So I'm just excited to have Julie here today with me. And, I really don't know what she's going to say. We talked about these different things over the years, but we never really dove into it the way we're going to dive into it today. So I hope that you out there listening find things, as always, that touch your heart, that help you maybe understand things that you're going through a little better, connect with God a little more. That's really our hope in all of this, in telling these stories. And maybe there's one of you or a couple out there that's struggling through what we went through, and this gives you hope that you can make it through. So there you go. That's my hope. Julie, do you want to jump in?
Oh gosh, at the time.
Well, here, why don't you introduce yourself first, love? Just say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Especially when they're seeing your face. So.
Yes. I'm Jeffrey's wife, Julie. And as he said, we've been together for 38 years, and it just seems like yesterday. But yeah, so excited to be doing this work together because it's, you never really retire. You just go on to new passions and projects. And this is one that's speaking near and dear to our heart because, now that we have evolved, we just want to bring others along to enjoy and experience, uh, the beauty of connection and relationships, and especially that relationship with God and with Jesus, and just allowing that to be your firm foundation in life, and actually bringing out your passions and purpose, because it doesn't end with one thing. It just evolves into another and really helps you grow, not only spiritually, but relationships, mentally, emotionally, and all the different pieces that we're doing together.
Let's kind of wrap our minds back 14 years now. It was around August, September of 2011 when it all began. And I'll let you kind of talk about your perspective back then. But what I shared in the last show is I had started playing around with binaural audio just to help out with work. That was kind of my secret guise that Jessie had went off to, our daughter, our eldest, Jessica, went off to college. Thought, I'm going to have all this extra time. I'm going to get ahead of email. Julie she'll give her perspective here shortly about what kind of man I was in those days. I'm a bit different now. But, yeah, I started doing that. And that led to a moment where I had what some would call a Kundalini experience, where I had a moment with a flash of light and a presence with oneness. You'd all think that would be good, positive, right? But in that moment, I didn't think I was worthy. And so I went through a journey of thinking that everything I was experiencing was outside of me. And the things, I began to hear voices and have visions, things I didn't share with Julie at that time. And I began to have some different behaviors. So it might be hard for me to listen, so I apologize if there's any emotions that come out, but I want to get Julie's perspective because I shared my story. So take yourself back to that time and maybe share with the audience some of your, kind of what was going through your mind.
Well, I guess to start with, we were both very consumed with our work. It kind of was all that we did back then. You were very driven, I was very driven, so it really took a lot of our time. And so for a long time, it was nothing unusual for you to be working in your office super early in the morning or late at night, because you were driven to solve problems and work to get things done, and you took pride in that. You were expected, you had, I think you had a weight on your shoulders to accomplish things, but it also fueled you, which, I greatly admired that, because it was, you excelled and it was fun to watch you succeed. But I guess when things started changing, probably I would always go to bed ahead of you because I like to turn in early to get up early for my role as an educator. And you would be on the computer. I could see the light in the office. Gosh, I don't know if you got to bed at midnight, 1 or 2 a.m. unless I asked you and you told me. And I was like, what on earth is taking so long? But I really thought nothing of it because he was very involved in his work, and so was I. So it was kind of like a no big deal. But, it probably wasn't until, And again, the timeline is kind of fuzzy for me for what happened first, second, third, and so forth. But some of the things that stood out was when one significant event, I woke up and you weren't next to me in bed, and I could tell you weren't in the office either. There was no light on. So I'm like, where did you go? And as soon as I got up, you came in through, I think you came in through upstairs, like you were downstairs and came up, but you had like a t-shirt on and shorts, and you were bare feet, and you had grass on your feet, and it was wet. I'm like, what on earth were you doing outside? And you had gone walking through the woods, and at that point, I was like, why? What is it, that you were doing? So that kind of freaked me out for a moment. And your eyes were lit up, your face was lit up, like you were searching for something or seeking something, or something told you to go somewhere. And I kind of, I guess, tuned it out as if, okay, maybe it was dreaming, sleepwalking, who knows? So, of course we went back to bed, but, that there were other little things that would kind of spin off that in the days or weeks ahead. Other times when you would wake up, or I would wake up and I would see you you'd be laying in bed, but your arms would be raised up and you would be talking or chanting or something. Again, thought it was a dream state. I had no idea what was going on, but, and you would tap me and you would say something like, don't you see it? Can't you hear it? Can't you feel it? I'm like, no. So, again, I would just go back to sleep. But there were little episodes like that, and you would say how you just were so immersed in this kind of new world and visions that you were seeing, and it was like kind of like a kid in a candy store. I just assumed that listening through your binaural beats thing, like it opened up a new world for you and you're excited or whatever, but you started to be drawn to that, and almost as if you were pulling away from work and from me and wanting to exist in this little, what I call a fantasy world. So I don't know, I was just kind of letting it ride and play out, thinking it'll stop, it'll go away. Just as a lot of the interests that he would have, he would dabble in something and 3 months later it'd be done. But this was very different. It was, I don't want to say taking over your mind or something, but you definitely weren't grounded and yourself, I should say. So yeah, so I would lie in bed at night thinking, what is going on? But I was afraid to talk to you about it or say anything because you were so giddy about this whole new world you were experiencing, this higher consciousness, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I could say that now, and then nothing in my head said, oh, he's going crazy or whatever. I just was letting you experience and kind of work through whatever it is you had to work through, kind of hoping it would just stop and go away.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember that I didn't want to share any of the bad things with you. And I was I was kind of hiding that from you. So I'm just sharing with the folks out there. I would get talked to a lot. I would get voices. I would have visions. I would see things that I knew everybody else wasn't seeing, which is a very important distinction. I'll talk a bit later on the psychology of things. And I would feel the energy running through my body. I would sometimes be very elated and seeing angels and beautiful things. And I had a moment where I was one with an orange, which was quite amazing. So there were really some incredible things. So that's probably what you were seeing in me. And then there were some very scary things. not to scare you folks out there, I'll talk about this a little bit. I love the fact that you said you're like a kid in a candy store. It's a very big spiritual principle for me now because I know that all that's out there, energetically, spiritually, the different levels, if you will, or layers, that's how we like to look at things, the different experiences you could have. You can get lost. Whether that's, I know there's some people out there that see fairies. I remember seeing gnomes. I've seen aliens. I've seen angels. I've seen devils, all right, or demons, and what I would call associated with the devil. And you can get caught in that world. And you're right. You're absolutely right. I wasn't grounded. And so, not to scare any of you out there who are going through this, because what I'll share with you is there was a very important quote that I came across after I began to heal, and we'll kind of get to that, which was, "Don't get lost in the clouds." That was from actually it was a Hindu religion, spiritual leader. We're not into Hinduism, so I can't speak eloquently on Hinduism, but it was a very important quote for me because many of the messages at that time, visions, many of them will come through the clouds. And I would journal a lot of that at that time. Jill didn't know all of that, but I don't think. But I want you to talk a little bit about, the timeline to me is it happened pretty quick. It was like the end of August through September, and then I ended in the hospital in October. But talk a little bit about, from your perspective, that was probably the early days, but as it got to where it became problematic, where you became really concerned about me. Maybe talk a little bit about that and about your perspective. What you remember that?
The fact that you would continue to listen to those, binaural beats or whatever, you were consumed with so much information. You just wanted to learn more, read more, whatever. And I don't even know what it was you were listening to or watching or whatever, but it was luring you into something. I remember one night, again, a lot of these things come in the evening, it seems like, because of course I work during the day, but I was very nervous and worried because the pattern was continuing, and it was like you were distant from me. I felt you were going away, you were leaving, and so to speak. I remember waking up, curled up on the floor next to the bed, and in just a little fetal position and crying, thinking, what is happening? And I can't say at that time I've always believed in God and everything, and always felt, He's my higher power, but I didn't really fully pray. I did pray then, and said, please help him. I don't know what to do. 'Cause that was scary, and because I was too afraid to say something or approach or whatever. I just was like the observer in this whole scenario. And I guess I'm kind of glad I had my work to distract me. I guess it was a blessing and a curse, because maybe I could have helped sooner. Maybe I could have, but when you're driven to do something, there's nothing stopping you, So, I mean, I knew that about you, and you definitely wanted to follow through whatever this was, and I just was hoping you'd come out on the other side. The other thing that was pretty interesting, when I came home from work one day, you came running up to me and said, I figured it out. I'm going to go away for 40 days and 40 nights, kind of like what Jesus did, although I don't know if it was this ayahuasca thing or whatever, which you shared before, but I'm like, and you were 100% convinced you were going to do this. And yet it didn't involve me. Because for a minute, I'm like, am I going? What are we doing? And like this was a journey or something you had to do for whatever reason. I don't know. But you just said, I've got to do this. And I just dropped everything and I walked back into the bedroom office area and I'm like, no. And I don't get mad. I don't get animated, but I marched right back and I said, you are not going anywhere. You are not leaving me here for this long and, with our kids. And I don't know what's going to happen. I said, that's enough. You can't go. And you paused and said, okay, I won't go. And thank goodness, because who knows what would have happened. And yeah, that was really shocking. Really shocked me. That's when I knew something more was going on here.
So I remember that specifically because I was getting so many messages. A lot of what happened to me then was at the very beginning, Jesus came through.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, as you stated earlier, the truth was I wasn't grounded. So I wasn't discerning. It's a very important thing they talk about in the Bible that I didn't learn till much later. I wasn't discerning the messages. And actually, my dad helped me out a lot in that moment, in that particular moment. I was talking to him about that, going away. And I guess it was a very Buddha feeling, a very Jesus feeling, separate from everything and really just dive into the spiritual side of the good stuff, right, that I was experiencing. And, there is a bit when you're experiencing things that are not everyday occurrences, you start to, I don't want to say not want to be in the world, but, you do want to play in other places. So
you were definitely detaching.
So, what I was going to say is I wanted to mention this to everybody out there, especially if you're going through this. I didn't feel like I had anybody that I could talk to that could relate to me. I would urge you to reach out to, if you don't have the support group, whether it's through a church, you're not part of a church, reach out to a professional, a therapist. We'll talk a little bit about that because even after I went through what I went through, therapy was extremely important for me. Even years after, and I'd never had experiences with therapy before. So outside of when I was a child, and I think they sent us to therapy for divorce. But as an adult, I never chose to go to therapy, and that really helped. We'll talk about that. But I want to let everyone know, first thing, you're not crazy. Second is, I hope you have an amazing life like mine, who didn't leave me back then. Sure, sprung me out of the house. But if you don't, reach out. You're not alone. There's many, many, many people I've found over the years that have gone through this. It's very important to get support. It's very important to get perspective. You could always reach out to us at support@creatingourownlight.com. We'll answer your questions. But know the most important thing, you should get some real professional support in your journey. It's what I would have done differently if I would have been aware. I would have better discernment back then. So you talked about a couple moments of me being called outside to ground myself and to pray. That was what I was coming in from the time. You talked about the Jesus moment where I had to run away for 40 days and 40 nights to get myself right, I guess is what I thought at that point in time. Talk a little bit about kind of when we got close to the big moment, right? The hospital episode. It was early August, early October when I went in the hospital. So it probably was the first week of October. talk a little bit about your perspective, because I know that happened over a couple days, but maybe talk when Jesse called and they took me in the hospital and that experience.
Yeah. I was in administration then, so I was in an office setting, and when I got the call from Jessie, she's crying and was sharing with me that, Mom, I think something's wrong with Dad. And so she went through the story of you laying there and your body was cold, and to call 911, and that they came and were going to take you to the hospital. And it just all happened so fast. I just dropped everything and had my secretary, bring me to the hospital, because I was like panicked. What do I do? What do I do? What happened? I thought, gosh, something health related, something different. So I showed up to the hospital, and you were there in a room, and immediately the doctors were asking me questions, pulling me aside in the hallway. Are you on any drug? Was he on any drugs? What pretty much prompted this, because they couldn't find anything medically wrong with you. You were very healthy. And so I can't even explain why your body would, or you would think your body would shut down and you'd get all cold, and I, wasn't there to experience that. But so that was really kind of freaked me out. And then, so here, what I'm trying to describe, how you first started listening to the binaural beats, and you just started consuming all kinds of information, like overload and not sleeping. And I just had to chalk it up to sleep deprivation and hallucinations and whatever. And I'm sure they took all kinds of copious notes and said, thank you, but but we're gonna keep him for a little while. And yeah, that was that. And I assume you came home shortly after.
Yeah, that day, the first day, so to folks a perspective, I wasn't sleeping. I hadn't slept probably for a week or so. I don't really know the exact number of days, but I was getting so many messages. I was so ungrounded. My energy was ripping through my body. It felt like I was being torn apart. I would lay there and cry at night, and just a lot of this I'd left Julie out of. So the day that Jessie was home from school, she decided to stay over till Monday morning. I guess she didn't have classes. She was home from college, and I did. I just felt all the energy in my body. I felt cold and clammy. I felt like I was going to die. And I went up and touched her. And I know I told this story in episode 1. And that scared her, because she felt how cold and clammy I was. And I asked her to come downstairs with me because I was afraid. And that's when I went unconscious. And that's when she called you. And I sort of remember that because I was going out. I remember parts of the ambulance ride. And I remember being in the hospital. And I don't know how long I was. But I remember coming to later in the afternoon. And then the next day, so then I had called my boss and told him I wasn't feeling well. And I said to my boss, I said, hey, I'm just not feeling well. I need to take some time off. He's like, wait. It was October, and at work, we never got to take vacation. So I had like a billion days. So he's like, just take whatever you need. So I was like, great. Jessie went back to school. I thought, I'm just going to sleep, and do nothing. And I'm not going to do any binaural audio. I'm not going to do any reading. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to chill. And that morning I did chill, except I started experiencing all the same energetic feelings. I got scared again. That's the other thing. It led to another principle in my life that it brought a lot of fear into me. And I was thinking all kinds of crazy things. Like I broke my brain. I screwed up and was blaming myself. I I really thought I broke something. And I called my dad finally. I called my father. He drove in. He lived a couple hours away. He drove in all the way in for me. Told me he would be there. He wanted to talk to me first. And if I still wanted, he would take me back into the hospital. And he took me for a walk. Again, I mentioned this in show 1. And he said a really important thing to me. He said, God will never ask anything of you again. He said that to me, that you can't handle. You just need to put your arms around yourself and breathe. And walked a little bit. And even after all that, I said, Dad, I think I broke my brain and you need to take me in to the hospital. So Dad did. So I know what I did at the hospital. I unloaded on that poor nurse all the visions and voices I had. And talk about somebody scrambling to take notes, and you're like, probably in her mind, like, oh, this dude's crazy, right? He's getting voices and visions. And I told her, I said, specifically, shut me off, shut my brain off, shut me off. And that's exactly what she did. And they put me in a probably not straitjacket, because I was drugged up, but they shot me up to the psych ward, which was about 50 minutes away from our house. So I don't even know, babe, when you got called, when you arrived, it's two words long. When you arrived at the hospital, like what you were thinking, was I already knocked out? I don't remember any of that, because I just remember Dad being there with me.
Let's see. And as far, I don't remember the time frame from you coming home from the hospital and how much time expired till you ended up in the psychiatric ward. That was just days later.
Was the next day.
Was it the next day?
Mhm.
Oh my God. Yeah, I didn't remember that. But when you came home, I thought initially, great, you're healed, everything's fine. So yes, I didn't know that your dad had come up and you went on a walk and had this conversation, and you were at the hospital, or the facility had called me saying that you were there. And I was like, what? And I think what really went through my mind was like, well, he's finally going to get help. And never in my mind, I know you mentioned now that you thought, I was going to leave you, that your marriage was broken or whatever, failed. It's like, that never crossed my mind. It was always about, I have to be here for you. I have to help you get better. I have to help you figure out what's going on, because this can't be the rest of our lives, So, yeah, I mean, I love you with all my heart, to where this is, we're going to get through this. We're going to fix it. It's going to get better. So I remember showing up, and it was some kind of a waiting room area or lobby, whatever. And there were a bunch of chairs there, and you looked very tired. The first thing I wanted to do was to hug and embrace you, but they made it very clear, as soon as we did, there's no touching. They were like totally adamant about any physical contact. And I was floored. I was like, what? I had no idea why. So it's like we were sitting side by side, and just, you shared with me the whole experience in the hospital, and just, you were just beside yourself, I think. You didn't know how long you were going to be there, but you wanted to get out as soon as you can so you could come home. So it's like, yeah, let's get you home.
Did you even get to the first ER, or did you only go to the psych ward where they put me?
No, I remember I was at the hospital, and that's when the doctors took me in the hallway, were asking.
That was first. That was the day before. But the second day when Dad took me to the ER, did you go there? Or the only place you went was to the psych ward?
Psych ward. I think so. But I only remember being in one hospital.
Yeah, I wouldn't know, because they drugged me up. So
yeah.
And you saw me the next day. You and I think Jesse and Dad came up the next day.
Yeah.
Did Dad stay with you then? Or he went back home and came back?
I think
Wow.
no, nobody stayed. I just remember coming up night after night, after work. And again, this place was like an hour away from home. So just having a conversation and you just telling me about your experiences there, and you wanted to get off the medication, and you wanted to come home, and yeah, you just cried a lot. I do recall that. So I cried with you. But I knew, I knew this was going to be a place to help you. Come home. So,
I should have brought cleanup here.
and that's exactly what happened. About 5 days, was it 5 days?
I was in there for 5 days.
Yeah, that you came home, and I knew you had some medications to take, but that your number one priority was to wean off of those. But I will have to admit, I watched you like a hawk because I was worried you'd go right back into the same patterns of watching and listening and whatever. But you promised me that you did not want to experience those things or go through that again, that you were really going to follow the doctor's orders. You were going to do what you had to do to come back to yourself and become the person I thought you were. Now, funny thing is, prior to this whole experience, Jeff, for those of you listening, has always been very confident and very proud and everything he did.
It's my ego.
But I loved and always admired that confidence and whatever. And to hear that he didn't love himself inside kind of was a shocker to me, because I thought if anyone loved who he was, it was Jeff. In fact, he's one that always kind of pushed me to go outside my comfort zone and do things that I normally wouldn't do. So he was my mirror and the one who. So I actually looked up to that level of confidence, whatever, because I was in a role that needed a lot of that, being in front of a bunch of people and speaking and stuff. But it wasn't until after the event that I could see the whole 180. It's like you were so much more peaceful and calm, and you became grounded, and you actually were more attentive and not running around all the time. It's like you really cared more about what I had to say. Not that you didn't care before, but because I could see this different in you, it was from a more loving perspective. It's like I was amazed. And like you had to go through all of that just to become more present and connected. And I mean, you didn't even want to hurt little bitty ants in the kitchen. Like you wanted to redirect. It's like, oh my gosh, we're killing the ants. I like there was a problem there, but
Julie had no problem.
But it was like you were reborn. You had this whole new outlook and perspective on life, which was amazing to me because I wanted to feel that same, well, gosh, source of happiness, I guess, because it really felt genuine and authentic coming from you. And yet I didn't want to have to go through some, psychiatric experience or crisis to allow that to happen. And that's when my journey began. I said, well, I just want a little bit of what you have, to feel that sense of, gosh, that peace, calm, grounded, centeredness that you did. And to start to go through life that way, because I could really see from your perspective, you were walking the walk, you were living it. And I was all about, what's next? Got to finish this, my to-do list, get this done. I was never fully grounded and centered myself. And it wasn't until I saw that in you reflected back to me that I needed to have a little bit of that. So I asked to go on the journey with you, and whatever that meant for me at the time was just opening myself up to different professional resources and self-development type things, to, read some books and listen to some podcasts and kind of sign up for, dabble in some courses here and there to kind of go on that spiritual journey. So
Yeah. So this is actually a fun story I want to dive a little more into, because it's about a little more than a year after the episode. But I want to give people that are out there that maybe have experienced this. Yes, you don't need or want to go into a psych ward. You can hear my experience with Jesus in the first episode. I'm not going to go through that because there's so many other good stories here. So please go back and listen to that. But Jesus brought me that peace and happiness, and it was that realization, like you said, that I didn't love myself, and I was doing all these things from the ego to prove that I was worthy. That was the war in me. So it's like God says, right? You're not of this world. You're my child, and if you do things of this world, so that's what wears you out, right? So I'm chasing not things that are not God. So, but I do want to say that the folks in the psych ward, well, my life was over, and my wife didn't leave me, and my wife came with, thank you, love. Oh, Dad. The people in the psych ward were wonderful and amazing to me. That they tried different drugs on me, and they ultimately gave me just one to help me sleep. Being Seroquel, if I remember right. And immediately the psychologist that I went to, because I promised Jules, that I promised her, I said, I'll go to traditional medicine. But she never doubted my story with Jesus. And so I said, I also need to go on the spiritual journey. And so she was supportive of that. I did feel her hawking over me, like, is he going to break again? Kind of like I was a fragile egg, which I didn't blame her for. But my psychiatrist, I'm sorry, he was the one giving me the medications. I went in and saw him and gave me my journal. And he said, I just want to let you know, because they diagnosed me temporary bipolar, which is like not even a diagnosis, but he says, I want you to know that what you've experienced, if Jesus came into my office, given what he shared an experience, I would diagnose him the same as you. So he was being humorous. But yeah, we got off the medication in 6 months, and things were just going amazing. And that's when Julie mentioned ayahuasca. It was the next year where I'm like, I'm going to ayahuasca. I was this spiritual rock star at this point. I was discerning better. I was more grounded. I had learned how to meditate. I prayed a lot. I had lots of wonderful conversations with Jesus, and everything was going great. And I didn't want to make Julie feel bad by sharing it with her. And so it was about the next March, and there was a teacher I had connected with who was going to ayahuasca. I'm like, man, what the heck, I'm going, And I put an envelope of money for it, and I just told Julie, like, hey, I'm going, and I know you don't want to go, because my wife, which there's aspects I love about her, she loves going to dinner with me, she loves staying at wonderful places. She has more of a posh taste that I can deal with. I can deal with hanging out in the yurt, even though it's not my favorite thing. And anyway, I knew she wouldn't enjoy it. I said, you wouldn't enjoy this. So, but it was that moment you said, the way I remember it. It'd be good if you kind of talk about this a little bit too. I know you did talk about it, a little more maybe. She was in her office, and I was standing by her, and she looks at me like I'm crazy. So I share this ayahuasca story with her. She starts crying, and she said, you're going to leave me. And I said, or I think you're going to leave me, or something to that effect. And I said to her, love, that hasn't crossed my mind. I have no plans on leaving you. I'm just going to go, probably ayahuasca, which I know people have done. I'm not judging it, but I think God had another plan for me. So, and thank goodness. And she's crying there, sitting in her office chair. And she says, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, because you're a good husband. You were always a good husband and a good father, but you're a better man now. And of course, through the tears, and she says, I want some of what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just in my mind going, I am such a no-nuts. Like, I'm like the worst husband in the world. And just like, kicking myself for not sharing the journey. And I said, and I don't remember exactly the words I said to you, but I said, oh, I'm so stupid or something like that. And I said, of course I would love for you to join this journey with me. And I just remember saying, but it's your journey, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do things that call you. And I remember, and this is my wife's, one of her amazing gifts in the world. She lights up like a child. So she's always been that way. And your eyes lit up and your smile, it's a beautiful smile. And you're like, really? And I said, yeah. So I said, do you want to go on a spiritual trip with me, you and I? And you said, yeah. I said, well, why don't you find out what you connect with and we'll go. And that, led you off on a journey of your own. So I want to hear like that first, your perspective of that moment I just shared with you. Maybe you don't remember it at all.
No, I do remember seeing, I thought the whole ayahuasca thing was prior to.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the timeline it was all compacted into, that short little span. But I was excited, to actually do something together. And it was probably that moment that I thought I can do this too. I was looking, for, somebody needs to tell me what path to take or who to listen to or what event to go to. So it was a little trial and error of listening to different people. And I honestly don't recall what books or who or what outside of the one event we went to in particular. And Rika Zimmerman in Chicago, the one that we went to. So that started the whole journey for me. But I just was glad to be joining you and not feel like an outsider.
Mm.
And
well, I was maybe in a stupid husband.
So that was what, that's what started it all.
So Julie, I remember her finding Rika. She was listening to something and she just said, hey, I think you would like this. And I just remember her throwing the phone on the bed, and then I just remember my heart being called to the phone. And I said, oh yeah, we're going. There's we have so many great stories in our life, so we're clearly not going to get through all of them. And, we got about 10 to 15 more minutes here on the podcast. But Julie, we get to Rika, and Rika's kind of one of those intuitive, not play by the book people. And as I mentioned, Julie was a teacher and administrator, and everything was by the book and had a process and rules. And Rika had no process. So I tend to be very feeling. I feel the energy. I began to feel, God gave me a lot of gifts. Jesus gave me a lot of gifts that I began to feel. I was able to be what people would call an empath. I was able to feel people. I was able to really feel deeply. And I also had ways down the road that I had more time to do it. But at that moment in time, I was having a great time and Julie was not.
No.
So she was sitting there. We were at a small group with Rika, and there's maybe 12 of us, mostly women. I think it was me and one other guy. And she was sitting there the first day. I remember it didn't go too long the first day, but we were in a Marriott in Chicago. So it's not this fancy hotel, it was just a Marriott. And we went up to the room and she's like, why did we spend all this money? I think it was $3,000 or something like that. Why did we spend all this money? I don't get this. You get this, or I think is what you said. I don't get this. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why. I just uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I said, honey, just give it one more day. I think it was a 3 or 4 day workshop. And if it still doesn't work for you, we'll leave. That's what I said. You're like, okay. So you went back down. So we were talking about the Rika event. So Julie, she was sitting in the front row with her arms folded over, and Rika says, Jules, what's up? And Jules goes, nothing. And she goes, are you sure about that, Jules? What's up? And she goes, I just don't get this. This is, he gets this. I was sitting right next to her, but I don't get this. And then Rika, for me, it looked like Rika says, do you feel that? And just goes, you mean that tingling? And it was down in her root chakra, in her crotch area. And I'm sitting next to her, and actually I'm feeling her energy. So, but she says, well, yeah, you mean the tingling down there. And she had this moment of awareness. And then I remember feeling the energy go up your body. So I started losing the words, but I remember there was moments where you're crying, talking about your parents making you eat cold peas or green beans or something. And it was really, you kept on saying, well, this is silly stuff for me to be crying about. You just crying.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately her energy went all the way up to her crown, and she went into this full kundalini, which in her case caused her an orgasm in the middle of everybody in class. The kind of class you can see her on camera. She might be embarrassed. And we always call it the Harry Nut Sally moment, right? And Rika, of course, had some choice words. She didn't have a problem using F-bombs, so she was making humor out of it. And the rest of the class was like, hey, can I get a raise in their hand? Can I get a session? Rika, this session particularly. So it was quite funny. But I would say after that moment, the experience I had with Julie is she felt she was immediately tapped into everything and running around the Marriott, every song that she would hear. Anyway, I want you to jump in and talk about your memory of Mike could be totally off, your memory of that experience.
Well, I do remember being very frustrated and not happy with not having an outline, a workbook, some notes, whatever. It was just totally fly by the seat of our pants type thing, and that's not the way I roll. I'm much different now, obviously, but so when I don't like something and I don't want a confrontation or a conflict, I shut down and I was just kind of had my arms crossed, and I probably had totally shown on my face that I don't like this. I don't want to be here. And yes, she called me out on that. And she made me talk. She made me, she wasn't going to let go. And she kept saying, can you let that go? Can you let it go? So there'd be moments where I would say something, that I was unhappy with. We must have been talking about childhood memories, because she would draw some experiences out for me or whatever, and that I was frustrated with. And it did have something to do with, me having to take care of things because I was the oldest, and, just frustrated with, childhood stuff. and combination with her class and that. And she was, in my sense now, recalling back, she was trying to get me to energetically release those things inside, letting go rather than keeping it all trapped and shuttered. And because I didn't like that icky stuff and I didn't want to feel that way anymore. So she, through her words, her energy got me to release these things, and it just kept coming through my body. And it was like all these layers that were being peeled away and just bursting outward. And I guess that's where the Kundalini experience happened, because I felt free and safe enough, believe it or not, to let all that stuff go. And once I did, it was such a freeing experience that I saw the world differently. I was able to see through a different lens. And then I think it was at that moment I got a sense for what you were experiencing with that peace, calmness, grounded centeredness, authenticity inside. But I will admit, it probably lasted definitely that rest of the time there, a couple weeks afterwards. But once I got back into my normal routines, patterns, behaviors, I started thinking less and less about it and started to go back to my same habits and patterns. So because of that, I really wanted to come back to, how can I experience that 24/7? How can I actually feel high energy, high vibration all the time? And so that, from that moment, I promised myself and to God that I'm going to do whatever it takes to learn more about myself, discover my path, my purpose in just really being that high energy, high vibration, and love of myself. Because I think I too I thought I loved who I was and whatever, but I think I loved all the things outside of me. Starting to really uncover your true essence, your true worth, your true value. That's a big journey, and that's a whole other story. But I'm so glad that that was the springboard and that we got to actually support each other in the growth where we are here today. Like you said, that's a story for another time, because there's a lot more. But we promised to support each other and to grow together. So I really, I thought this is all gonna be okay. This is gonna be something we can do together. Now, how many years has it been?
Well, that was
Since Rico?
Yeah, Rico was 2012.
12, and we're in 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we went back to work or whatever. So it was definitely a slow journey, but there is no timeline. It's all divine timing, where God led us to where we are today. And I'm so grateful. I wouldn't change a thing. Everything.
Yeah, that's the important thing. So I know we're kind of up on time. We're gonna have to do a show too, because we had so many cool things. Like even what happened that night with Rico, which we'll leave that as a
teaser
or the next show.
Yeah, we can have a part 2.
Yeah, part 2. I'll make my wife come back. So I want to kind of recap for everybody. You said some really important things there. Like, it's taken a while, but you wouldn't trade it for anything. I went to a psych ward. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to share with everybody is, if you're going through something kind of intense, or your relationship is impacted by something like this, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to talk to your partner. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to share this show, because Julie said one really important thing is we chose each other through it all. Mm-hmm. And it's a very important philosophy that I have in life, is I believe now, after this journey, that our job is to learn how to love ourselves enough, right? Love ourselves first, so that we can choose to love others as
right.
God loves us, as Jesus loves us.
Yeah.
And that's my
Mhm.
philosophy in life. So what I told Julie, and it's an ever, it goes on until we stop breathing. But I want to learn how to love her more as God, as Jesus loves her. And that's a journey. It's not easy to walk the path of Jesus. I don't think we're meant to. Jesus was the one, and I don't think we're meant to, but I think that's important for all of you out there to, if you're faced with a challenge, to hold on to hope, hold on to each other.
Mhm.
We got lucky in a lot of ways. We chose to choose the best in each other, and we opened up our pathways at different times. And as we will share in the next show, well, that journey evolved. Sometimes Julie was evolving, and sometimes I was observing, and sometimes, she was observing. That happens a lot with couples. But that's my advice to you all out there. Just choose each other. And you got to do that in every moment. Choose the best version. Choose the one that God chooses in each one of us. Do you have any advice for the holsters?
Not to give up and trust the process, because when you're in the thick of things, you may think everything's crumbling around beside you, or around you, and you hold on to that faith and that hope, because that is going to be what drives you and grounds you and keeps you focused on that healing, that moving forward, because faith is pretty much what kept me going, and I'm very grateful for that. Yes, there are moments of, um, you know, gosh, shame, disappointment, worry, fear, doubt, jealousy, all those things get in there, but those are temporary. And to know that of what comes upon the other side of that is amazing and beautiful. So do not give up hope in that. It is just a temporary thing. We've got eternal life in heaven and eternal life with our Father. So it's one of those things I can say now and look back, but in the moment, yeah, I was just clinging for dear life, and that's when I reached out, God, please, please help, and He did. He's faithful. So hang on. Everyone's journey is different. You will come out exactly, on the other side where you need to be, and your greater purpose will be revealed.
I also want to kind of wrap this up with one little thing. So when Julie was going through this with Rico, just kind of encapsulates the show. And I'm watching her go through this divine experience, being basically plugged into God for the first time. I'm sure she's been plugged in before, just I wasn't the witness. And I could feel my ego on one shoulder, as we would say, the devil on one shoulder, and then Jesus on the other. And Jesus was having a really good time with this. He was laughing at me. And my ego was looking at Julie going, this woman's never meditated a day in her life. She doesn't have a prayer practice. All these judgments were spilling out of me. And Jesus was laughing, and he said, oh, Jeffrey, I told you it takes nothing to be with me, to be with God. And it doesn't take the protocols and emotions and the specifics. And Julie did it. And I was like, wow, she didn't have any barriers to God. And I was just so at jealousy, right? I was so jealous. I was frustrated. And I had to laugh at myself as Jesus was laughing at me. That healed me. And I'm like, oh, goodness, I'm so full of myself. But I wanted to share that because we can get that way in our journey. We can get so focused in, we need to do it this way. We need to do it that way.
The human story versus the divine story.
Yeah, we just realized that God is always there, and we're the ones putting the walls up. Yeah,
absolutely.
We
battle those demons every day.
Yeah. Well, thank you, love. Well, I'm blessed to live with this woman every day. So, that should come on my show, and I think you were a little nervous. All right. So,
yeah, because I wasn't given a script or whatever to say. So again, having to talk about this, how many years later, I have a whole different perspective and set of lens in which to view it. And I'm, grateful for that whole experience, because we wouldn't be here today
Amen.
had those pieces not been in place. So God knows what he's doing
Amen.
to help us grow and learn and evolve. And I'm so glad I am able to be where I am today. And yeah, just so very grateful.
Well, thank you, love. Well, all of you out there, and I've really enjoyed this show. And I look forward to our next show, which is going to be with a good friend of mine, Dawson Church. And it's around, he's an expert in meditation and tapping into consciousness. He's just really an amazing human being. So please, I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you found a moment outside of getting, probably falling in love with my wife. Getting a few moments where maybe it touched your heart, or maybe it opened some doorways for you to think differently about your relationship with God. That's the whole point of creating our own light. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm going to wrap this up in prayer. Father, thank you for opening our hearts and our minds and our beings to all that is you. Thank you for teaching us the divine lesson that you're always there with us. And it's only a simple journey of us taking down the walls to be with you. Thank you for teaching me, teaching us that choosing love in every moment is the journey you're asking us. Letting go of judgment, letting go of fear, letting go of worry, and trusting you. So in your name, Father, in your Son Jesus' name, and in the Holy Spirit, bless all the people who listen today, and just open their hearts a little bit more to you. Amen. Thank you.